And so, life is offering such grace, such beauty, if we can truly receive it from where it's coming from. If we don't get confused and believe that the play is real, if we do not engage in the play of the world from a position, any position, but not from a position of separation, then we can receive the grace of every single thing that is happening on the surface of life. That everything that is happening to bring something unconscious onto the surface so that it can become conscious and get unraveled. If we believe the story and we move with the story from a position of a separate individual being, then we are pushing away the possibility of the unconscious becoming conscious. The thing is that allowing the unconscious material to come to the surface means meeting things that we don't want to meet. It means feeling things that we have learned not to feel. It means facing yourself so fully, with an open heart and willingness to feel everything that we could say you have not wanted to feel. To face yourself is not to suppress anything, but to meet everything that arises in you when you receive the reflection on the surface of life. To not project the unconscious onto, we could say, other beings, not to project. When there is projection, it is denying yourself the possibility of receiving the grace of what is being offered. Sometimes we don't fully have the ability. And so the speaking of this is shining the light on an area that is so important, so important. Because if we are moving from the unconscious, then we are moving from a position of separation. We are moving from a position of you and me, and not from the wide open heart that knows that the play of the world is a flow of divine grace. It is a flow of love that is only here to set every being free. And being free is being free of all that is unconscious in your field. So often, of course, we do not know what is unconscious in the field. But what triggers us, what creates resistance, what has us meandering in the mind, wanting and desiring, playing out fantasies, is unconscious material that's just wanting to come forward. We could say it is about living as a prayer, that every single thread of unconscious can be brought to the surface, into the light, in order to be freed. A living prayer that everything be humbled. A living prayer that everything is humbled into the divine and comes to the clear knowing that there is no separation, that there is no division, no fragmentation. There is no you and me. There is no conflict. But only when there is a resting in the heart of being is the knowing of this truth here. And only when resting in the heart of being can this truth be lived. And sometimes it will test you. Sometimes it will push you. But its testing and its pushing is the great offering. It's the great offering. And this is where, when there can be the humility that just asks, that may every single fiber that I am not aware of be humbled into the light of clarity. May every single fiber of this being be turned to the divine. May this life be a living prayer in utter devotion to clear, pure truth. That is not just a speaking of a sound bite that says, yes, I'm devoted to that. Yes, that's all I want. But the life is a living prayer, a living testament to the possibility that is fully alive for any being that is true. Any being that is true can find that this truth is right here. But it takes to live this truth all the way through. You cannot gain this truth through any tricks of the mind. You cannot gain this truth by the sound bite. Yes, I'm devoted to truth. Yes, it's all that's wanted. Because if that is not the absolute fullness of the heart, of course it will not come forward. And then what right is there to complain? What right is there to be agitated with God for not giving you what you want when your devotion is not true all the way through? Devotion that is true all the way through will be offered exactly what it is devoted to. So let the life be a living testament. Let the life be a willingness in every single moment to be resting in the now with an open-hearted, equanimous beingness that is willing to receive life, to see it from the true perspective, to see it from the true eye that receives the grace all the way through, that is not so ready to want, that does not have an agenda, that is not desiring a particular outcome, that is not defending and protecting according to unconscious material. So whenever there is a noticing that there is defense or protection, a wanting, a trigger, even just floating around in fantasy in the mind, it's to see where there's a separation, where there's a you and a me, where there is more than one character in your play, there's some work to be done. Right? Where there is more than one character in the play, where there is another, there is work. So, there is so much compassion that comes forward from the heart of love for everything that happens, because the heart of love just loves. And the heart of love has so much compassion and tenderness for the idiosyncrasies that we get tangled in. And yet, the heart of love will also, in this compassion, sometimes have to bring forward a fierceness that says no to ego patterns, a fierceness that is offering a deeper possibility to see the unconscious material. Because it is only when this unconscious material comes forward, and let's say that love will do whatever is necessary for itself, because there's no other. So love will do whatever it is necessary for itself to help itself free itself from the tangle it is in. That is all that is ever happening. Fierce grace is the fierce, wild compassion of the mother, because she is so committed to truth all the way. You know, Kali Ma wears a necklace of skulls because she collects your head, she collects your mind, and she strings them up to make jewelry to adorn her. She collects minds that have gone astray. But it is compassion. It is fierce compassion. Because love, truth, wants only what is true. Come to the place where the knowing is here. Come to the place that is alive in every being that knows this truth. Because this place is the placeless place. It is the heart of being. It is the being itself here now. And there is a knowing here. There is a knowing here that is so clear, and it resonates like a clear bell ringing truth. You do not have to work it out. You do not have to evaluate the situation. You do not have to have an opinion. You do not have to analyze. You do not have to ruminate and chew it over. Truth is truth is truth. It's immediate. It's spontaneous. It's now. And it's so vibrantly alive and always fresh, ever, ever fresh. It's the truth that is always now. So when you are now, you are truth. When you are now, you are the spontaneous being that is fully awake to itself, resonating truth. You are the clear bell ringing that truth. And it is without question. If there is a question, find out who is that questioner. Who is that one that is questioning? So love is so profoundly loving and unconditioned in its love that it will do anything for itself to set itself free. And part of its movement is that it will move through certain forms, and it will move on the surface of life in order to bring forward the unconscious material that, of course, because it's unconscious, you don't know about it yet. Right? You don't know about it yet. But love does. Love does, and it's not holding a single thing against you. Love still loves you. But love knows that in order to be free, everything that is creating a sense of separation needs to come to the surface in order to be met, received, and seen through. And it organizes this perfectly, in perfect timing. So you are always fully equipped to deal with whatever life brings forward. always fully equipped, even if the mind says that you are not. It's one of the mind's tactics. The mind will always be feeling like, I can't do this. This time it's too much. This time it's going to kill me. This time it's pushing me over the edge. See, the mind is full of drama. The mind is full of drama, and it doesn't like to be challenged. But then there's the predicament. Here's the predicament, is that in order to free all of the patterns that habitually cause a sense of being separate from the whole, everything that is unconscious has to come forward one way or the other. You do not have to excavate for it. You do not have to go digging around. Because when you are aware being, when you are aware and you are resting in the stillness of being, and you are moving, we could say, slowly enough through being in the now, what you can be sure of is that every moment is absolutely drenched with wisdom. Every single moment is saturated with the most incredible divine wisdom. But when you are still, slow enough to keep receiving and to be aware, to have this vigilance, this radical honesty with yourself, to not project, not to blame, not to start cycling around in the mind, having those conversations between you and the other, like a rehearsal, or just for the fun of it. You know those conversations? Chitty-chatty in the mind. You're already having the conversation. You're imagining that you're in a conversation with somebody that you've got a bit of a gripe with. Be slow enough to notice. What are you doing? What's all that about? So we see the unconscious at work. It's making a projection inside the mind. It's having a conversation, and it's trying to find its righteousness through having a conversation with somebody that's not even really in front of you. And it's trying to be right through that conversation, right? And then when enough courage and when you feel right enough, you're going to pick up the phone and you're going to call them and you're going to do it for real. Right? So have the honesty to nod, even if it's internal. Have the honesty and humility to smile, because it's what all humans do, right? It's what the mind does. It's what the separate one does. So let's bring it out into the light. Let's bring it out, this pattern. Love just loves. Love doesn't say, oh, that's wrong. Oh, you're bad. No, love just says, see it. See it. See that projection. See that mechanism. Be slow enough, be still enough to see how that plays out, and that the wisdom that is being offered in that moment is not to project it, but to notice, what is your story? Let the projection just be within your own internal world, and listen to, what are you telling yourself here? Be honest enough to say, what am I telling myself? What is actually the wisdom that can be gleaned here? What is my story here? So, when there can be a receiving of the wisdom through this radical honesty, through catching the mechanisms to project, it is to then receive the energetic, the feeling. Recognize that the reason that you're having a conversation with in your head with Mr. Nobody is because somehow there's some kind of resistance, there's something playing between you and another, And it's that pattern of you and another that has to collapse into the being. That pattern has to collapse into the being. And this is refinement. This is the work only you can do in your internal world. Only you can receive that wisdom and transmute it through receiving the energetic, through having the clarity and willingness to receive the energetic, feel the feelings that are alive without projecting into opinions and judgments, to receive the energetic. We could say in that there's taking a complete and utter responsibility for the discordant in your field. Taking a complete and utter responsibility for the discordant in your field is a sign of maturity. It's a sign of true readiness. It's a sign of a true being that is inviting life to be a living prayer, and that is moving slowly enough to say, how is this me? How is this mine? How is there wisdom here that can be received? How can I receive this all the way? How can I not make this about someone else? And then, of course, the unconscious material comes forward. And this is grace. This is grace that allows the unraveling of what you couldn't see. It brings the blind spots into the light. And then you come to recognize that there's a flow of gratitude that comes that is just saying, thank you, thank you, thank you for the one that you wanted to prove yourself right to, because that being is not separate from you. That being is love that is dancing as an apparent other, only to bring forward the exact situation that is required for you to receive a deeper value of yourself in order to free something that has been unconscious, that can create identification and separation. It frees a discordant pattern so that you can come into a greater, fuller value of your true nature. We could say that love then releases into your system. You know that love that was dancing as that knot to be yourself. Suddenly that love that was a knot is free and it's flowing. And you recognize there has only been one. There is no other. There never is another. So this is the invitation. It is to recognize that the play of the world, your view of the world, is a unique view. We could say that it's a dream. It's all happening in your mind. It's not real in the way you think it is. So if you start jumping around, acting as if it's real and trying to be right, then it really invites the question, who is that one? Who is that one? What you see as your world is a unique view. It is just a dream. It is a dream that love is creating on your movie screen. Just for you. just for you. You cannot understand this with the mind. And the mind will even come into all sorts of mechanisms of wanting to defend that and say, oh, but this, oh, but, but it's to stop the buts. No buts. Just to receive, just to feel. What does it bring up? What does it stir? What happens in your inner landscape? Everything is about what is happening in your inner landscape once there is enough maturity to be living as a prayer, living as a prayer that is in constant prostration to truth and truth alone. And let's say again, not as a soundbite, not as something that is that just gets spoken. It has to be felt with every single fiber of your being. True devotion. True devotion is pure. True devotion is your being in devotion to its own beingness. It's not someone. It's not someone in devotion. It's not someone that is creating a spiritual life that is just another dance of the ego. This has got nothing to do with what the surface of life looks like. It's got nothing to do with deities and malas. It's got nothing to do with what the mind imagines spirituality is. This is to do with truth and truth alone. This is about devotion to truth alone. There's nothing wrong with deities and malas. They're the great glory. They are the great glory. But let deities and malas be a reminder of pure truth, of pure devotion, right? They're not for decoration. We have to see the funny side of all of this too. It's important because the mind can get very, very serious. Let's remember that love just loves. The being always is. You always are the true one. So it is to live as the true one and to have the willingness as the self, as the true being, to see all of the habits on the surface of life that can pull you away from what you are truly devoted to. It's to enliven that devotion. That is what we are here for, to fan the flames of true devotion, to really point to what matters here, what is important here. So that life is a living prayer. Life is a living prayer that is asking for everything to be humbled, asking for everything that can pull the attention and create a sense of separation to be humbled all the way into the heart of being. That life be a perpetual surrender of the being surrendering into itself. Because it is only when this divine surrender is perpetual that there is a living in the now, 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 ever fresh, ever present being. So you feel yourself here now. When you feel yourself here now, you open to the vastness that is the true being, the resonance of truth that is infinite, unbounded. You come to the heart, not your heart as in my heart. You come to the infinite heart that is the true heart, the heart of being, the heart that is ever full, that is utter wholeness, that is the true I. The knowing of this is already alive in you, as you, right here now. The world is a dream. It is made of love. And that love is not to be mistaken for something that is real, when true reality is only love itself. True reality is now. True reality is just being, simple being. It is empty of all content. So we speak about, we could say, the unconscious material and bringing it forward in a way that might seem like content, but we're only pointing to all of this to empty the moment of content. We're pointing to what can be distracting, that when there is content that is engaged with as if it is real, then you can get lost. And love doesn't want you to get lost in the quagmire, the jungle. Love's invitation is pure and constant. Love will bring forward exactly what is needed in every moment. Matters not what the mind thinks about it. Love isn't here to buff egos. Love is here to see through the patterns that create ego, because the patterns of ego are the mind, are the dream, are the illusion of separation. And the invitation of love is eternally to see through the illusion of separation and live as the true being. True integrity. Integrity is just to be true to yourself. It is not something that can be measured in the world. The self itself knows integrity. Integrity is to live from the heart, to live here now, in this ever-present moment as yourself, being yourself. A living prayer, a living prayer. Where every single fiber of your being says yes. Every single fiber of your being says yes. And when every single fiber of your being says yes, there is a resonance. And that resonance is now. That resonance is truth. That resonance is bliss. It is the bliss of being. When every single fiber is aligned, you will find there is not an atom apart from you and yourself, and nor has there ever been. There is not an atom that separates you. There is not a breath that separates you from yourself. That you have only ever been yourself. That everything that plays as the me and the mind, that too is the self. But the mind cannot say that and get away with it. The mind cannot say, oh, but it's all the self, because that is not freedom. That is a soundbite. Only the self itself can declare the truth. Only the self itself can celebrate the jubilant joy of its freedom. Here now, when every single fiber of your being is resonating with the nowness of your own presence. There is an enlivening of the field. You might feel it as stillness. You might feel it as presence that is wildly alive. You might feel it as joy or love. You might feel the resonance of truth. You might feel a quality of devotion that threatens to tip you right over so that your forehead is right on the floor in the dust. Because it can be so hard to stay upright when you're vibrating with pure devotion. Where the form just wants to collapse itself. It wants to collapse in perpetual surrender, in divine surrender, in pure devotion. A yes that is a loud, resounding, unquestionable, unwavering yes to truth alone, in utter devotion. So every being has this aliveness. We could say that before pure devotion can be felt in the fine feeling sense, it will be felt as a longing of the heart. It is what brings you here. It is what brings you to the quest, the longing of the heart. It is not even to know what that longing is for, but it is to feel the ache, the pull, the magnetic pull. That which longs to know, that which longs for freedom, that which longs to just be, that which is so pulled by the profundity of silence that it recognizes itself. And there is a stop, a supreme stop. Silence itself, recognizing itself, whispering to itself. The whisper of silence is bliss. It is the fine feeling of bliss, an upwelling from the deep source of silence itself. Comes the fullness, comes the wholeness, comes the purity, the beauty of your true nature that whispers. The innermost being whispers this truth to itself as the resonance of silent knowing. Cannot be found anywhere other than in the silence itself. The whisper that is equanimity, is bliss, and the fine, fine, fine feelings of love that is without condition, a joy that is effervescently causeless, a delight, an awe, a wonder, in the meeting of something that cannot be believed. To meet yourself, you cannot believe. You cannot believe what you are. You cannot believe it. So you are in awe. You are in wonder. You are in ecstatic jubilation. You cannot believe the truth of who you are, but you know it. You know it without question. Because it cannot be believed. It cannot be created in the mind. But the knowing is so pure and jubilant. It is in awe, in wonder. And there is a peace here. A peace that is undisturbable. The peace of knowing that your true nature is utter contentment. You cannot be touched. Nothing can touch you. This is true safety. This is true security, we could say. Not that there's anything here that wants safety or security, but the peace and contentment of knowing that nothing can touch you, of knowing that nothing has ever touched you, that nothing has ever happened in the way that the mind has imagined, that when you are here now so fully, there is no past, there is no future. We could say there is not even a present, because the now is presence itself. It is not of time. It is timeless, timeless being. The now is presence itself, present to itself. It is not even the present moment, because it is not a hair's breadth away from itself. The intimacy is ultimate. The intimacy is supreme. So, you are being breathed. You are being lived. And between each breath, there is this openness. Between each breath, as the in-breath turns around to become out-breath, You can enter the vast field. Notice now, in-breath, in a nanosecond's pause, you can come to the presence of the infinite field and discover your timeless nature. You do not have to worry about the out-breath happening because you were never doing breathing. You have only ever been breathed by life itself. And you find that your true nature is not the body. You are not the one that is being breathed. You are the breath of life itself. You are the breath of life itself. You are life living itself, animating the form. You are not the separate individual one. And between the in-breath and the out-breath, between the out-breath and the in-breath, you can enter eternity. You do not have to worry about the mechanism of breathing because you were never the doer. You were always just the life itself. Between the in-breath and the out-breath, in that nanosecond of a pause, as breath turns around, you can enter the infinite field of your timeless being, and you are free. The feeling of yourself here is infinite, eternal, the timeless being, presence itself, the eternal now, bliss, bliss beyond imagining. If you want to know the bliss of being, enter the infinite field of divine being that is between each breath, until breath and breathing are forgotten, and you are the infinite, that you are freedom, that you are resting in the glory of your true nature. Mm. Mm. Life is a dream. It is not what the mind imagines. When you are resting in the now, you will find there is only now. There is no story. There is no me. There is no separate one. There is no past. There is no future. There is only now. This is the truth. This is the truth. This is the truth of who you are. So what of this appearance? What of this appearance? This appearance is a manifest expression of the patterns of consciousness that are dancing as your mind. We could say, depending on the maturity and where you are resting, the appearance is God's dream. When the appearance is God's dream, it is just shining, shining, shining as living joy. That there is nothing other than God here, nothing other than the Mother. Everything is shining with the same divinity. That the oneness, we could say, is that there is only God. Not me and God, not you and God, only God. We could say the word self, that there is only the self. The self is God, the self is grace, the self is divinity. So if the world feels like my world, then it is just to receive it. Honestly, you could stay completely still in your being and you would still be moved in the world. It wouldn't mean that you would never get up out of your chair, because stillness is not about the body not moving. Stillness is your true nature. When you are resting in the stillness of being, you will be played and moved in the world. And depending on where you are living, it is how you see, what you see, how you receive it, how that work happens in your inner world, how you can receive the possibility for everything that you see as other to reveal its wisdom. But wherever there is a seeing of other, wherever there is story, there is a possibility of clearer seeing. And when there is clearer seeing, it is a tangled knot of love redirecting itself into divine remembering. That there's no one to have an opinion about anything. So we could say the times of challenge and resistance are just as important as times of opening and surrender and beauty and clarity. When there's only one, it's all the same. It's all the same. The deeper there is a coming into being, the more openness there is to receive, because the true nature is utter openness. And then it is just about the receiving, the meeting, the honesty, the feeling, the surrender. The surrender is the surrender of that which is not true. It's a willingness to see that it's a dream. The willingness to say, that is not true. That is not truth. And to let the discordant pattern of separation collapse into the being. To let the discordant pattern collapse into the being. Mm. 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 So in the field of consciousness right now, there are some discordant patterns that are unraveling. There's great beauty happening. Where there is an honesty and where there is a deep receiving of what is being spoken, there is movement happening in the field. And as that movement happens in the field and the discordant surrenders itself into the being, there is more clarity. There is more clarity that is available and possible for each being in their beingness. The recognition of what is true, the turning to what is true immediately and naturally turns away from what is false. The turning to what is true it brings illumination. It brings a shining illumination of the presence of being. It brings in the bliss, the aliveness, the clarity. It brings the recognition of love that is without condition. The recognition that love without condition is the being where there is no separation. True love is just the absence of any kind of separation or division. True love is the clarity that shines in the absence of a me and a you. And unconditioned love is the flow of unconditioned life. So where there is unconditioned love flowing as unconditioned life, then the flow of life is free. The flow of life is not obstructed. The flow of life is the flow of grace. And it flows and it flows and it flows. Unconditioned, always love, always, always free, until it hits something. Right? It's the same flow. And if in your view it hits something, then it is your work to find out what it has hit. That is the grace, that is the beauty. That is your karma yoga, is to find out what it has hit. What is that tension? What is that resistance? And this is where it is to be so fully here now in the presence of being, because your naturalness is openness, that is not trying to evaluate the situation. So it's not trying to evaluate what it is it hit. It's not trying to analyze. It's just a willingness to see that where that flow that's flowing and gorgeous, where it rubs up against something, it's just this possibility to see, what is that rub? What is that rub? Because that rub, it might feel like agitation. It might feel a little bit aggravating. It might feel like resistance. But that rub is the rub of love polishing something to make it shiny and smooth so that the flow can keep flowing, right? Because the flow, it doesn't get hooked. It just keeps flowing, right? So the more present you are in the being and the ability to receive, the humility to receive, the honesty to see that there's nothing outside of you. And it's not about going into story. Sometimes story offers a wisdom, but it's never to be indulged. It's only ever to receive the wisdom and then to feel the feelings. Feel what it is offering. Feeling the feelings is to receive the charge in your nervous system. It's to receive the charge, the energetic signature of the charge. There's no mental activity involved at all. It's just to recognize that there's an aliveness. We could say the charge in your nervous system is an aliveness. But often that charge will be an aliveness that you might want to get away from. But don't get away from it. Don't leave it. Give it the presence and love that it wants. Be unconditionally with it, without wanting anything from it, without analyzing it, without pushing it away. Just welcome it and let it dissolve into the being. Let it dissolve into the being. This is the surrender. The surrender comes when there is a humility that allows a complete receiving. And that complete receiving can only happen when there's no projection. And that complete receiving brings a surrender, and then something on the surface of life that felt to be other has found its oneness with the divine. A thread of your humanness has found its utter oneness in the divine heart. It has found its innocence in the divine heart. It has found what it has always belonged to. So then the whole story in the relationship with past starts to dissolve. The stories of unworthiness, unlovableness, of being wounded, of being traumatized, they just start to dissolve because you start to see the innocence of everything. That every single player has only ever been animated by the same divine one. That love has been moving every player through the whole life. There's never been a mistake. Even if experiences might have felt to be challenging and we didn't have the ability to transmute them or understand them, the players have always been equally moved by love. There are no victims in love's true world. There is no victim. There is no perpetrator. There is no you and me. It is not a story of blame. It is not a story of vengeance. It's not a story of holding these stories as true. It is the possibility that gets offered to see through all of it. Honestly, even the greatest stories of trauma can be completely dissolved and seen through the utter innocence, how everything was only ever God moving. And I know that feels very hard to the mind to understand in some situations, because God moves in some very curious and wild ways. It is not to try to understand, but it is to come to your true nature, because coming to your true nature offers the possibility of such profound understanding coming in, such profound understanding that can unravel all trauma, all cycles of victimization, which is essentially the story of separation. It can unravel everything and bring a quality of healing that can only come when you can know in utter truth of your own direct experience that there is only God, there has only ever been God. And that truth is what sets everything utterly free. So these words as they come, it is to feel what is being spoken of, the resonance of it, because the mind cannot understand. But on a certain level, you can feel the resonance. When there's a readiness, you can feel the resonance of what's being spoken and the profundity of what is possible. The profundity of discovering the utter innocence of every single thing about your life. It can be completely unraveled in the light of truth. And you do not have to go digging around. It's not therapeutic in any way. It's not of the mind in any way. It is just what naturally happens when you are resting in the true heart. There is a wisdom. A wisdom is the flow of divine intelligence that is naturally bringing a quality of clarity, innocence, and immaculate knowing. And this is true healing. We could say part of this is a quality of forgiveness that comes. The only forgiveness that comes is seeing through the story of separation. You're forgiving God. You're forgiving God for all the characters that God has played in the life. You are forgiving God for playing all of those characters that you found challenging and difficult. And the forgiveness is the forgiveness of God. And in there's a subtle beauty, which is a forgiveness of yourself for your misunderstanding that has come out of separation. It's a forgiveness that really moves as a quality of compassion for yourself. To recognize that the one that has felt to be separate has been moved in perfection. So in truth, there's not a coming to clear seeing and having any blame or upset with the one that has lived in separation. There's utter compassion, and that compassion carries this very subtle quality of forgiveness for yourself, forgiveness for the character that you've played, and actually can start to really flower into a gratitude for the character you've played, an honoring of the character that you've played, such love and compassion for the character that you've played that is equal to the character that every being has played in the life, right? It's not different. It's not, oh, I'm the hero or the heroine and there's the baddie over there, right? It's the seeing through every baddie as being completely neutral, right? So this that we're speaking of is the unraveling of a story of a life that's possible. The great glory shines upon everything. And as the great glory shines upon everything, it offers this divine possibility. This is the possibility of allowing the unconscious material to come forward without resisting it. This is the divine possibility if we don't transcend away from feeling the feelings. This is the divine possibility, is a depth of healing that is, it's not a healing of a me, it is a healing of the deep, we could say, wound of separation, right? But the healing of the wound of separation is a seeing that it was never a wound in the first place. It's a complete seeing through all separation and coming to an utter oneness. An utter oneness where there is only God, where there is only the self. And you are that. You are that. You are that now. You are that now. And here now you can feel that your knowing is the knowing of God. God knowing God. Love knowing love and nothing else. It is all that is here in a really full, rich now. Mm-hmm. So this healing that we speak of, it is the healing of the great illusion. It is a healing and a transformation that brings the realization, we could say is born out of the realization that there is only God, only God. Hmm. Hmm. Feel the resonance of truth that is the heart. Here now, feel the knowing that is the divine knowing, that is yourself, knowing yourself here now. Feel how vast that knowing is. Feel the infinite nature of the knowing. Feel the presence, the alive presence of the knowing. Feel the resonance of truth. Feel the clarity and beauty of that knowing. Feel the silence that is yourself, the silence that is a rich wholeness. It is this wholeness that we speak of, that is the profound knowing that is underneath true healing. Underneath true healing, you come to know the wholeness that you have always been. And this is important. You are not becoming whole. You are recognizing that you have always been whole, that the story of your life has never, ever happened in the way the mind thinks. Here now, you are the same immaculate divine being as you have ever been. That this moment is the eternal moment, and you are the same divine immaculate being that you have ever been. That the costume you have been wearing has got nothing to do with the immaculate being that you are. And yet, what a great glory that you have this body, that you're wearing this costume, and your form is a manifest expression of the divine. So the more that you come to this clarity, the more that your form dances as a living emanation of your realization, of your recognition. The more the light shines through, we could say the more the divine heart is able to shine as what seems like your heart, because it's just one. So you can feel this truth, you can feel your own beauty. It blows everything apart. It blows apart the whole crazy story and all of the importance we give to that which has no relevance, really. Mm. 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 The true nature is allowing. It's this profound allowing. Allows it all, receives it all. Because the knowing is pure peace that is undisturbable. A contentment, a simplicity, and a bliss that is not a mood or an emotion. It does not come and go. It is ever present. Bliss is the true nature. Everything is made of bliss. Bliss is your true nature. Mm. Mm. So this divine invitation that your life be a living prayer, that what feels like your life is recognized to be God's life, the one life, living itself. And that the living prayer is an utter devotion to truth, where every fiber of your being says yes, yes to truth. This purity of devotion, the self in devotion to itself, saying yes to itself. How could it be any other way? It is all there is. Mm. 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 So allowing the light to shine, allow the shining of the light of truth that is ever illuminated, the silent illumination of the self, shining, shining, shining. Mm.